When I was younger, I would think a lot about how to make my life matter, how to do something with my life that could outlive me, to really leave a legacy. I'm going to tell you the secret to that, because maybe you're wrestling with it. Maybe you're wondering, how do I make my life matter? Does it matter? Am I doing enough? Am I doing enough for God? The secret is in Mark, a book in the New Testament, Matthew, Mark. It's the second book in chapter 15, verse 21. We meet a guy there named Simon. Jesus has been beaten so badly that he's too weak to carry his own cross up to Golgotha. And so the soldiers choose somebody from the crowd. They choose the black guy, which you can wrestle with that, is a guy from northeast Libya, which is basically Tripoli. So a North African man named Simon. It tells us he's Simon from Cyrene. That's that town. And that's helpful, isn't it? To realize there's a dark-skinned guy really, really early in the story, because sometimes the world would tell you that white people wrote the Bible, and that's just not true. Jesus wrote this story, not people, and Jesus includes everybody. And so as Jesus is there, the soldiers grab Simon, who's just a passerby. He's just walking by. He's minding on his own business. Actually says he's coming in from the fields, and they make him carry the cross. And I think, and many scholars would agree with me, it absolutely changes his life. Participating in the death of Jesus changes everything for Simon. It tells us in Mark 15 that he's the father of Alexander and Rufus, which is a weird fact to throw in, unless Mark is assuming that the people who will read the story know who Alexander and Rufus are. And I think that they do. In chapter 16 of the book of Romans, the Apostle Paul sends his greetings to Rufus, probably the same guy whose family was profoundly affected because his father Simon participated in the death of Jesus. Alexander and Rufus are Greek, Roman, Italian names. Simon has moved from Africa. We think he's probably living somewhere across the Mediterranean now. And in Acts chapter 11, verse 20, you can look that up, Acts 11:20, there are men of Cyrene, which is where he's from, in Antioch, preaching about Jesus. Now, how did people in Cyrene get to know about Jesus? Unless you go back to Mark and you find this guy who was profoundly affected by the death of Jesus, named Simon. In Acts chapter 13, just a couple later, we find that among those men from Cyrene in Antioch, there's a guy named Simeon called Niger. Niger's just Latin for dark-skinned. They actually called him dark guy. Which you got to remember, race came way later. We didn't have a concept of race. Race was part of the marketing campaign for slavery. It was a way for people to sell slavery, to say, well, oh, these are different than those. They're a different kind of thing. And that just didn't exist in history. We were different colors, but we were always human. We were always human. So Simeon called Niger, and it's Simeon there because his name's really Hebrew, Shimon in Hebrew, and when that comes over into Greek, it's either Simon or Simeon. It's the same name. Dark-skinned guy from Niger, among the men of Cyrene, there in Antioch, preaching the gospel. We think it's the same guy. Can't prove it, but we think it's the same guy. And we think his family's affected because his son shows up in Romans later on. He's profoundly affected by what he sees happen. He was just a passerby. It was just an accident, which Yoda would tell us. Accident, I think not. That's a horrible impersonation of Yoda in the garage, but it wasn't an accident. And Simon, his life is affected because he participated in the death of Jesus, not because he prepared a life for himself. Let that sink in. If you really want your life to matter, if you want to do something with it, then participate in the death of Jesus. Don't prepare a life for you. You participate in Jesus' death, not prepare your life. It's just that simple. I had an old professor, Harold Honer. He's not with us here anymore. But he wondered how many of us are Christians because those soldiers chose Simon that day, because God chose Simon. I'll see you later.